For my project, I focused my questions around my high school in Ramsey, New Jersey, called Ramsey High School. The Ramsey public education system consists of 5 schools. 2 schools from K through 3rd called Tisdale and Hubbard. 1 school that's 4th and 5th called Dater. A middle school, which is 6th through 8th grade, called Smith. And my high school, Ramsey High School, that is 9 through 12. Ramsey is not one of the more diverse towns in New Jersey. According to a 2010 census, the racial makeup of the borough is 89.45% white, 0.65% African American, 0.12% Native American, 6.66% Asian, and 1.89% other races. For my project, I interviewed 4 different people. First, I interviewed Eva Farrar, who is 48 years old and from New Jersey. She went to Dwight Moore High School in Englewood and went to Trinity College for an undergraduate in history. She also attended New Jersey City University for her graduate degree, where she received a master's in special education. She is currently a math teacher at Ridgewood High School and has 4 kids in the Ramsey School District. The second person I interviewed was Jack Curran, who is 18 years old and is currently a junior at Ramsey High School. The third person I interviewed was Michael Terso. He is 19 years old and is a current student at the University of Maine, where he is studying zoology. Michael Terso is a 2016 graduate of Ramsey High School. The fourth person I interviewed was Carolyn Greenberg. Carolyn is 47 years old and also from New Jersey. She went to Pascack Hills High School and attended Lafayette College for an undergraduate in art with an education certification. She received 2 master's degrees from Fairleigh Dickinson, one in educational technology and one in education administration. Carolyn was formerly a school teacher, a literacy coach, and a curriculum director, and is currently serving as a literary education consultant for a company that is based in New York City that does work on both a national and international scale. Carolyn has 2 children, one who is a current junior in the Ramsey Public Education System, and the other who is, well, me. For my project, I asked each person a series of questions that related both to the Ramsey Public Education System as well as how globalization is incorporated within Ramsey. The duration of the video consists of some of the responses I received for each question. While multiple people will be answering the same question, it is important to note that each answer is unique to the individual and no interviews occurred at the same place at the same time. How would you describe the Ramsey education system?
The Ramsey education system, very, very strong foundation. The elementary schools are excellent. After they get to the middle school, I think it really is a teacher-by-teacher situation. There are definitely stronger teachers and weaker teachers, and there isn't a lot of continuity, and that bothers me a bit.
Depends completely on the teacher. Some teachers are very, very helpful, and it's less stressful, but some teachers, I won't name names, but some teachers are less helpful and they pile on work, so there's not a lot of flexibility.
It's definitely very test focused. They tend to focus on like either the really, really good kids or the really, really mediocre kids, and the kids who get stuck in the middle tend to kind of get the shorter end of the stick because they don't get so much focus.
It is considered a school district with an excellent reputation in that students perform very well on traditional standardized tests, and graduation rate is high. All the usual metrics to measure that are very positive.
What is your opinion on Common Core and No Child Left Behind policies?
I don't have as much of a problem with the Common Core as I do with the way that they assess it. But sometimes the Common Core is a little restrictive in the way that they want the kids to solve things instead of allowing them to do things in ways that might be more intuitive for them. They kind of force them, specifically in math, to solve problems in sometimes convoluted ways, thinking that it would give a broader understanding for the children, and a lot of times it just doesn't. And as far as No Child Left Behind, well, we can go with the old Einstein. If you expect a fish to climb a tree and you say that it's a failure because it can't, you've created a problem.
I think the Common Core standards are pretty good and should be kept, but there should be more flexibility with what the teachers can do. And on No Child Left Behind, I think the standardized testing adds a lot of stress, unnecessary stress to the students when they should be learning what the teacher teaches.
Well, Common Core, I think there's a lot of controversy around Common Core. And part of the reason, or the majority of the reason for that, in my opinion, is that there's a lot of misinterpretation and mischaracterization of what the Common Core actually is. A lot of people, though, when they talk about the core, either associate it with the testing, so they think the testing's bad, therefore they say they're against Common Core, even though those are independent of each other. Or they think that, because a lot of times, because the people, the politicians, the spokespeople who talk about the core make it sound as if the core is dictating to teachers how they're supposed to teach, where that's actually not true. Before No Child Left Behind, I was working in a school district where entire populations of students were often neglected. They, for example, special ed classes wouldn't get materials and they wouldn't be provided with support at the same level that general education classes were. The resource room, the English language learners really didn't get fair treatment because they weren't quote unquote tested. So after No Child Left Behind, I do think that there was more attention paid to those groups.
What is your opinion on standardized testing? This includes tests such as the ACT, SAT, and PARCC test.
I have been tutoring SATs and ACTs, standardized testing in general, since for 25 years. If standardized testing is done properly, the way I see it, it would start off with, let's say, a middle-level question. It would be computerized, which is fine. It would start off at a middle-level question. If the students don't know it, then you go down to the bottom and build from the basics. So that way you have an idea of what they do know. And then you continue on until they reach a point where they cannot do it anymore and end it. You don't continue to question and question in an area where they simply don't know. If the test starts off at a high-level question that the children don't know, then all we know is that they don't know those. They don't know how to do that. Right now, the way I understand the PARCC, that's pretty much what it tells us. It doesn't tell us what they do know. Start with 2 plus 2, go to 4 times 4, go to 16 divided by 8. Start with the lower skills, build, and then tell us where their threshold is. Or you start with the middle skill. If they don't have the middle level skill, then you drop down to some lower ones. But just telling us what they don't know is not enough. I need to know what they do know. So as a teacher, I know where to build. Let's say I teach 5th grade. One year I have an amazing class. That class performs very well on the standardized test. I'm an excellent teacher this year. I am highly proficient. The next year, I get a class, and we all know this is true, that has a lot of students who are just not functioning at that high a level. I have a group of students with difficulty with behavior with various needs. What happens with them? So the next year, those students don't do as well. Guess what? This year, I'm only partially proficient. I'm not as good a teacher this year as I was last year.
They're okay to some extent. I don't think that standardized exams are really an accurate representation of a student's ability in some cases.
When populations of teachers and students and administrators feel that they're under the testing gun, that their schools aren't performing well, they feel they need to take desperate measures to prepare the kids for the test. And what happens then is that quality education and authentic learning tends to get pushed by the wayside, and students are then subjected to weeks and weeks and weeks of test prep, like taking practice tests and talking about testing strategies, and this very workbooky kind of instruction that doesn't necessarily result in them doing better on the test.
Many colleges are going test optional with applicants, meaning that students are not required to submit SAT or ACT scores when applying. How do you feel about this policy?
I'm fine with that. As I said, I've been tutoring SATs and ACTs for about 25 years. The SAT in particular is so easy to score better on if you're instructed properly. So if you have the money for a tutor, you're going to do better on the test. Now, can you go into the library and take a book out and be a motivated self-starter if you're a poor child? Yes, but you know what? It's so much more work, and who's guiding you to do that? Especially the smaller the school, if they're looking at the full application and they're looking at what the student has to bring and has to offer and what classes they've taken and the grades they've gotten, and they usually are fairly familiar with most high schools, that's a pretty good indication. I don't think that having the standardized test is necessary at a smaller school. I do understand at much larger universities that at some point they need to have some kind of a cutoff. I do understand that.
I think that kind of choice is important for students. It kind of relieves the stress and lets them excel in where they need to.
Right now, I think they shouldn't be optional, just because in order to kind of have an even playing field for everyone, you shouldn't just be able to opt out and still be looked at the same, because obviously if you're opting out of submitting your scores, there's a reason for that, So it's like, it's either you have to get rid of standardized tests or make everyone submit them. You can't really have that in between, I feel.
I actually am completely fine with that policy. I think that taking the ACT or the SAT is one measure of a child's performance, and it can be helpful in seeing how they perform in certain areas academically. However, it is only a small measure of all of the things that would make for a valuable college student.
My next question asks my subjects to compare the Ramsey public education system to school districts in Ridgewood, a town of similar socioeconomic status about 10 minutes away, school systems in the Bronx, school systems in the South, where teachers might refrain from teaching subjects such as evolution.
I think they're both very good schools. Ridgewood offers more, simply because they have a larger student body, so they have the opportunity to.
I think Ramsey High School is overall very similar because we're close geographically and we're the same kind of area.
We're probably on the even playing field. For the most part, I guess. There could be differences in some departments.
In Ramsey, kids go home and they do homework, and they go to Kumon and they do extra things, and they have extracurricular activities. A lot of kids in the Bronx go home to an empty home, and they're lucky if they see their parents who are working very, multiple jobs sometimes, and it's a completely different situation.
Bronx, which is a more urban, lower middle class to lower class, the school districts are not as good. There's more high stress.
Our schools are going to be higher level because we're way higher budget, better area. We pay a lot more for schooling in this area, so obviously we're going to get the better education system overall. But
the cultures in the school are really different. The schools in the Bronx feel much, much more pressure around the test, the kids and the testing. Kids, because they're coming from many, many more challenges than your typical Ramsey student, the kids don't perform as well. And then the schools, though, are under a lot of scrutiny from the city. They constantly have administrators, high-level administrators coming in and visiting the schools and making critical comments about the schools. And they're in all with the intention of trying to be helpful. But it really puts a lot of pressure on the teachers and the administrators.
Anytime someone takes religion over science, I get nervous. But even beyond that, I know a few people who teach in the South and in the Carolinas, because they have, I think in some of those states they have county-wide districts. So in some ways, I think that might make it better because there could be some continuity. But in other ways, I feel like it's so huge. How do you possibly have a grasp of what's going on?
I think when you combine religion in schools like they do in parts of the South, that impedes a student's ability to learn because it is forcing ideas on them instead of actual facts, and I think that's the wrong way to go.
You're allowed to believe what you want, but that doesn't mean you have to be taught in school.
Well, I mean, different parts of the country and different, even from school district to school district, you're going to have differences in values and, in religious beliefs and in, political stance. I mean, I wouldn't want to overcharacterize and say all schools in the South do this and all schools in Ramsey or in the Northeast do that. I don't think that's true, but you are going to have a more conservative bias in many of the southern schools and schools outside the metropolitan areas.
Why do you believe Ramsey is considered such a good school district?
There's a lot of family involvement. As I said, it starts from the elementary schools. Those kids walk out of third grade excited about learning. They have done a lot of things that are interdisciplinary. They've studied things that they're personally interested in.
There's a lot of flexibility for the teachers to teach whatever they want, and I think, well, not whatever they want, but it allows them to teach more to their style, and I think that's a huge benefit to both the teachers and students.
It's because I think we do have a good reputation. I don't think a lot of kids around here really know that, but we do have a great reputation around here for our education systems.
I mean, they have, in general, people like the teachers. There's like a positive culture in most of the schools. They feel like happy, good places for the kids to go. They have a lot of really good programs. Lots of the sports are good. The activity, the music and the art program are really good. There are a lot of really, real things in place that are very, very positive in Ramsey.
In your own personal experience, have you noticed any drastic differences between Ramsey and other schools?
Yes. The differences that I see really sometimes come in size. Some of the much smaller districts that I've worked in offer less to the students. I think that they're also socially limiting, which does not help for learning. Unhappy students have trouble learning.
Like what an emphasis we put on writing, because it's such an important skill that not all schools around the country give to their students because they just can't.
There's a different feel, between like a typical suburban New Jersey school district and like an inner city, New York City school district.
Do you feel Ramsey embraces globalization in its education system in terms of diversity with what is taught and discussed in classes?
To a degree. There's not a very diverse population in town, which I think limits it. So that when the students have conversations, they're limited in enough of the students have similar views. There aren't enough people who come from diverse backgrounds who might have different views just from the way that they've been raised.
Yeah, absolutely. We spend a lot of our history and English classes communicating with schools in other areas, and they definitely push a kind of inclusive environment. Even though Ramsey isn't exactly the most diverse town, we try to emphasize differences, and I think our school's really good at that.
There are courses offered like super sociology. That's a great one. That we can get a good cultural diversity and international perspective. I know there's religion courses too if you want.
I think they've taken a lot of some really good history classes and social studies classes where they've discussed global issues. Arts program encourages global awareness, cultural awareness. Could they do better with it? I'm sure that there are a lot of ways that they could improve that part of the curriculum.
How do you think Ramsey could improve in terms of both how they teach students and how they incorporate globalization?
We should embrace what globalization has offered us, which is the technology and the ability to work remotely and do things from other places.
Well, I think an even more push for globalization, like communicating with classrooms around the world, not just around the country, would definitely help. And what our principal's trying to do now, but it hasn't taken full effect, is every once in a while have a weekend where they require that teachers not assign homework, and that relieves a lot of stress on the student.
They didn't really focus a lot on the students who were kind of like in the middle. So it's like, they weren't particularly mediocre, but they also weren't particularly strong. They were just kind of in the middle. But in terms of globalization, that's just a matter of offering courses, I guess. Like you said, you can offer courses in religion, you can offer courses in cultural diversity, like, maybe in anthropology courses, something along those lines.
I would like to see Ramsey become less focused on test scores and grades and more focused on actual learning.
How do you think public education overall can improve?
They need smaller classrooms. One, period. I feel that we can really embrace online learning and different kinds of learning communities and really change that up a bit. And there are a lot of ways that we can watch and know what kids are doing. I watch the students in my room when they're on their computers. I know what they have up. I know what they're doing. It's not as complicated as people think.
Definitely increased funding to public education, because that's, for a lot of families, that's the only option.
I feel like there should be some kind of a way to make it more affordable for people who don't have it as good as we do, but I know that that's way easier said than done.
Overall, I'd like to see public education get better at preparing kids for real life. They are saying they want kids to be engaged and to be critical thinkers and to be able to work collaboratively and to have cultural and global awareness, and all of these real world workplace skills. I think that's a good thing, and that should be something we are striving for. How are we preparing kids not to do well on tests necessarily, but to actually be really strong readers and in ways that will be helpful to them in the workplace.
Here comes the sun, and I say it's alright.